Well, you're most welcome to today's talk, Saturday the 12th of November. Now, I was looking through some Office for National Statistics data from the United Kingdom today and was quite alarmed to find that there's been a great increase in morbidity. The number of people off sick for long periods of time has increased quite dramatically since 2020. Going up particularly in 2021 and 2022. And this is in addition to the excess deaths that we've been known about and reporting for some time. So we want to be looking into this a little bit today. And I want to do this, of course, in the context of the evidence, because without evidence, this is meaningless. Now, the first evidence I want to look at today is round about the topic, but it's here from the Zoe data. This is the new cases in the UK. And we see that symptomatic cases in the UK are going down, which is pretty good news. We're getting a reduction in the number of cases. And in fact, we're seeing less symptomatic cases. We're seeing less people diagnosed on surveys. We're seeing reduced hospitalizations from COVID. All of this is remarkably good news. And globally, we're seeing a lot less deaths from COVID as well. And yet, chronic illness and excess mortality, if anything, is increasing or is still high. It's been high for some time. There's a bit of a mismatch here. I think what we can say is that the cause of whatever's causing this morbidity and mortality is not COVID. And we'll be giving evidence from the Office for National Statistics to support that as well. There's other things going on here other than COVID. So that's the number of cases. Now, this is from the Office for National Statistics here, and it's completely consistent. The data is also going down, and we know that the ONS is always a bit behind the Zoe data that we've just shown. Now, this is Zoe data here. This is quite interesting. This is the home nations, and as we see, they're fairly together, but we see this orange line here, which is all over the place, kind of up and down a bit. So, and this is the Northern Ireland line. So, are the cases fluctuating dramatically in Northern Ireland? No. It's because there's less people reporting on the app in Northern Ireland, so the data's subject to more fluctuation because there's less people reporting. Therefore, smaller numbers of reports have a greater influence. Just an interesting way that data works. That's why I wanted to include that there particularly. So it's not that Northern Ireland is volatile in terms of cases. Now, daily incidence across the age groups. Now, this is really quite significant. Now, we are seeing a small increase in the younger age group. This blue line here is 0 to 17s, probably largely due to younger people socialising inside. But the key thing I want to point out is the red and the purple here at the bottom. This is the red is the 55 to 74 and the purple is the over 75s. Both going down quite dramatically, really. Many fewer cases in this age group. And of course, we all know now that this is massively significant because these are the people more at risk from severe illness and hospitalisation. So we can predict with some confidence that that is going to go down. Now, the number of people developing long COVID, we really can't say. That the statisticians at Zoe, of course, are quite open about this. They agree that they can't tell. How many people are developing long COVID now in the age of Omicron, we really don't know. But we do know that many people are suffering from disease or chronic disability, which is not COVID related. But you're going to have to hang on for the evidence for that in a minute. Now, this is we've looked at this graph quite regularly. Quite a fascinating graph. The orange line is people with cold type symptoms who do not have COVID, who've tested negative for COVID. And the blue is people with cold type symptoms who have tested positive for COVID. So what we can say is that these are non-COVID cold symptoms, and these are the COVID cold symptoms. And of course, we know that COVID symptoms can be much worse than the cold, and in the minority of cases can lead to severe illness and even in some cases, sadly, death. Now, this is the graphic I'm going to show you a bit more detail later. And more people are out of the labour market because of long-term sickness since the pandemic began, but long COVID is not the main factor. So this is from the Office of National Statistics. So this is our evidence for this. It's not the main factor. And these are the number of people off sick, and we see it's increased quite dramatically. So a small increase here, which was in 2020, then bigger increases in 2021 and 2022. And remember, the Office for National Statistics has said that this long-term sickness long COVID is not the main cause of this. So really quite alarming, really. Not only are people dying more above the average, more people are off on long-term sick. And here is the data from the ONS on so we know on mortality. So we actually see that tests involved with COVID-19 decreased. And yet, of course, remember that this is the blue line. So the black line here is what we would expect for the 5-year average. This is total deaths. And so anything that's green here, that is above the black line. So the blue are the COVID deaths. These are the non-COVID deaths. And these are the excess mortality. So what is driving this excess mortality, of course, is the big question. People die, of course, that's not surprising, but we would expect them to die up to this level, not up to this level, and only part of this is attributable to COVID. The minority of excess deaths is actually attributable to COVID. So there's another problem going on here, unfortunately. Now, let's just look at this briefly. This is the Zoe data. Prevalence 1 in 29 on the Zoe data. ONS, it's 1 in 40. But the incidence is going down. So next week, I would expect the ONS number to go down somewhat, because it's all the Zoe data is always more up to date than the ONS data. Since the end of June 2022, most of the Omicron has been BA5, as we know. That's from the ONS again, just released yesterday. Now, antibodies are currently in 95.8% of the adult population in England. Now, it was higher. It was the particular level that measured it was higher. It was about 90, I think it was 99.2 or something at one point. So, of course, the antibodies are waning in the blood. Hopefully, the B and the T cells, providing the long-term immunity, are waning much less so. But the fact that it's still really quite high indicates to me that there's still a lot of infection going around. Now, part of that is due to vaccination, of course, the antibody levels, but part of it is due to ongoing natural infection. And to me, it remains inexcusable that the Office for National Statistics are not differentiating between the two. I don't know why they're not doing that, but they're not. So Office of National Statistics, do check all the references for yourself. Long COVID, not main factor in long-term sickness increase. So more people are off on long-term sick, but it's not long COVID related. It's due to other factors. Since the pandemic in the UK began, the number of people out of work because of long-term sickness has risen by 363,000. This, of course, is terrible for each individual involved, and also pretty disastrous for the economy of the country as a whole. Now, the degree to which this is duplicated in other countries, we don't have data, of course. This is Office for National Statistics data, so we can say this is true for the United Kingdom, but if it's true for the United Kingdom, we have to, and I'm looking now, I just don't have time today, but we need to look around and see if the incidence of long-term sick is also increasing in other advanced economies who've had a comparable past few years to the United Kingdom. It could be bad news, I'm afraid. We'll have to wait and see. Number of people on long-term sick. Now, this is described as other health problems or disability, which is a bit of a catch-all group, but that's the direct quote from the ONS. Between April and June 2022 was 97,000 higher than in the same period in 2019. A 41% increase between 2022 and 2019. Quite an alarming increase. Now, I've got the graphic here for this. So we see levels of chronic illness relatively low. And then we see it going up. And now it goes up here partly at the start of the pandemic. Now, this isn't surprising, although this is non-COVID, but COVID we know as trigger is associated with other comorbidities. So a bit of an increase there, not too surprising. But what is harder to explain, and can't, as we say, isn't explained in terms of COVID, according to the Office for National Statistics, is the increase after that. So if we put that line there as 2021, so that's 2021 there, and that's 2022 there. So what we're actually seeing are really quite alarming increases there throughout 2021 and 2022, even steeper increase in the number of people on chronic long-term illness. So the question is, why would it have gone up in 2021 and 2022? Is a bit of a question that I don't have an immediate answer to. But that's the data, that's the evidence. People on long-term sick has gone up quite dramatically and alarmingly. And of course, this is not, this 363,000 is individuals. The 97,000 higher than 2019, 97,000 individuals. This is absolutely a bit of a national tragedy in the United Kingdom. A national tragedy that so many people are now on chronic long-term sickness. Terrible. In addition to the chronic long-term sickness, of course, we have the increase in deaths. So this is the COVID deaths week up to the 28th of October. 717 deaths involving COVID, not all caused by COVID, of course, but involving coronavirus. Previous week it had been 737, so good to see it down a little bit. Excess deaths in the UK ending 28th of October. Total deaths 12,861. Sadly, of course, people die. But that's 12.5% above the 5-year average. Now, it was more than this, so this is actually down a bit. Let's hope this trend continues downwards. But that's still, I mean, the last week we looked at, I think it was about 1,800 and something excess deaths. This week it's, I was going to say only, of course it's not only, it's 1,430 excess deaths. More people dying than we would expect. Combine this with the 363,000 people who've gone on to long-term sickness. Number of people out of work because of long-term sickness has risen by around 363,000. Combine that with the excess deaths, and this really is a health tragedy for the United Kingdom. Terrible deterioration in the health of the nation. Alarming. Obviously, you would expect this to be all over mainstream media. You would expect. Deaths involving COVID-19 were only well, I say only, but were 5.6%. So again, not accounting for the great increase in deaths that we are seeing. That's the link for official data. I think I'll maybe just make my point a little bit more here from some official data. So here we see healthcare. And we see that the problem with healthcare in COVID is still there, but going down. So these are people admitted to hospital with COVID. And we see in the last year, well, we see a nice deterioration now. The numbers are going down quite significantly. Patients actually in hospital, we see that's gone down. Let's look at the last year again. That's gone down to, what have we got there? 5,905, so just under 6,000, but going down, really quite a nice trend going down. And thankfully people on mechanical ventilation has remained low ever since Omicron came along. We're not saying that's necessarily a causal relationship, but it certainly is a temporal relationship. And likewise, deaths from COVID specifically are heading downwards, which is good to see. The trajectory is downwards. So good news on the COVID front. bad news on the excess deaths front, bad news on the morbidity and mortality front. Now, I've got more to say on that. I think I'll leave that for now, though, because I want to leave time to show you some video from Africa. Now, one of the projects that we support on this channel is New Hope Children's Centre in Kenya. Now, we actually showed some videos. I visited there recently, and we put out a Buy Me a Coffee appeal, and it raised $6,500, which is a fortune there. Now, Anne Chege, who's the greatest woman never to have won a Nobel Prize, is there, and she's organised some of the kids to say a thank you. Now they are mistakenly saying thank you to me. It's not me. This is a mistake. It is you who bought the coffee. So let's just look at these. Let's just look at these now. Let's go.
Hi, Dr. John. Our children are going to say thank you individually.
May God bless you, John. May God bless you, John, and may God bless you. John. May God bless you, 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 John. Thank 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 you, John, and may God bless you. Thank you, John, and may God bless you. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, John, and may God bless you. Thank you, John. Thank you, John, and may God bless you. 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 Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Bless you. Thank you, John. Thank you, John, and may God bless you. Say my John.
Now, to tell you the truth, I did actually ask Anne to give some feedback on that. Remember, when they're saying thank you, John, it's thank you to everyone who bought them cups of coffee, and it's we will be giving more feedback on what they've spent the money on. But one of the things already is improved food. So there's 120 kids there that'd otherwise be, well, many of them wouldn't be with us, and I'd like to formally nominate Anne Chege, the founder, for the Nobel Prize for Peace. One of the greatest people I've met, to be quite honest. And anyway, that's enough of that. So I'm going to put the link again there. If you want to look back at the videos where we interview people from the New Hope Children's Centre, then it's there. It just shows what well-targeted, relatively minor interventions, but done through the right people, can be really transformative. So thanks to everyone who bought cups of coffee. That's who they were really thanking. But for now, thank you for watching.